Dr. Jordan Peterson is no longer a tenured professor at the University of Toronto, or really anywhere at this point. Yep, he penned this article, okay, January 19th, so I guess that would be Wednesday, in fact, and yeah, announced that he has departed from the University of Toronto, a place that he has said on multiple occasions have had his back throughout everything that he's gone through, a place that he's spoken glowingly about, saying that, you know what, in the current state of modern education, it's a little bit more centered than some institutions, but he's finally reached a breaking point, and it's really been a long time coming, okay, because I don't think he's actually been in the classroom since 2018, so it's really been a minute since he's actually been doing any professoring. But the fact that he's no longer there, okay, really speaks to it, because he's addressing the central point and what really is the problem when it comes to universities, where it's coming, or rather what's at the heart of the destruction of society and business in general. Three small letters, D.I.E, diversity, inclusion, and equity. Jordan Peterson, why I am no longer a tenured professor at the University of Toronto. The appalling ideology of diversion, inclusion, and equity is demolishing education and business. We're not going to read all of this. I encourage you would, most like every other piece of Jordan Peterson writing. I can't recommend it highly enough. In the age of grifters, in the age of people just trying to shill their products over and over and over again, okay, this dude is the best-selling author, okay? He has very affordable, very cheap, very useful programs on his website, but he doesn't constantly talk about that. He's not offering a subscription forum, okay, for $100 a month. I don't know who with a stupid beard would possibly do that, but he's not one of those guys, okay? So for people who want to make those disgusting assertions, you're barking up the wrong tree and you don't know what you're talking about. But let's cherry pick some stuff here. I recently resigned from my position, I'm not going to do that, as full tenured professor at the University of Toronto. I'm now Professor Emteris, and before I turned 60. Very impressive, honestly. Emteris is generally a designation reserved for a super attenuated facility, albeit those who have served their term with some distinction. I had envisioned teaching and researching at the University of Toronto, full time, until they had to haul my skeleton out of my office. I loved my job, and my students, undergraduates and graduates alike, were positively predisposed towards me. But that career path was not meant to be. There were many reasons, including the fact that I can now teach many more people and with less interference online, but here's a few more. First, my qualified and supremely trained heterosexual white male graduate students, and I've had many others, by the way, face a negligible chance of being offered university research positions despite stellar scientific dossiers. This is partly because of diversity, inclusivity, and equity mandates. My preferred acronym, D.I.E. D.I.E. It was actually coined and very prominent. I will get the book right here. One of his colleagues and one of his good friends, Dr. Gad Sad. And in fact, Jordan Peterson provides a little quote up at the top. Read this book, strengthen your resolve, and help us all return to reason. Something that Dr. Peterson is hoping to do in a much wider population than simply at the University of Toronto, and I think we're all better off because of it. These have been imposed universally in academia, despite the fact that university hiring committees have already done everything responsible for all of the years of my career, and then some, to ensure that no qualified minority candidates were ever overlooked. My students are also partly unacceptable precisely because they are my students. I am an academic persona non grata because of my unacceptable philosophical positions, and that isn't just some inconvenience. These facts rendered my job morally untenable. How can I accept prospective research and train them in good conscience, knowing their employment perspectives or prospects to be minimal? Number 2. This is one of many issues of appalling ideology currently demolishing the universities and downstream in general culture. Yup. Great phrasing, but again, this is giving props to the master. So, not least because there simply is not enough quality BIPOC, BIPOC people in the pipeline to meet the diversity targets quickly enough. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. For those of you who are not in the knowing woke, yeah. Fortunately, yeah, it's very prominent in most of the stuff that you guys watch here on the channel as well, those stupid little acronyms. This has been common knowledge among the remotely truthful academic who is serving on a hiring committee for the last 3 decades. This means we're out to produce a generation of researchers utterly unqualified for the job. And we've seen what that means already in the horrible grievance studies disciplines. That, combined with the death of objective testing, has compromised universities so badly that they can hardly be overstated. And what happens in the universities eventually colors everything, as we've discovered. Yup, it didn't just stay in the universities. Once these people graduated, they didn't realize that real life is totally different. That ain't the case. In fact, they all get their jobs in the studies, or rather in the areas in which they studied, like human resources departments, in all of the hiring places, okay, the places where they can hire the rest of their woke buddies in order to take down the institutions and change the culture because it's so bad. Why? Because there's not enough diversity. And in the past few years, okay, especially since everything kicked off the second time with Black Lives Matter, what have we found? That diversity just really means white people need not apply. All my craven colleagues must craft D.I.E statements to obtain a research grant. They all lie, except the majority or the minority of true believers. And let's be honest here, the people who actually believe this stuff wholeheartedly, okay, not the people who pay lip service to it, because that's the majority of people. They just go along with it. They don't want to rock the boat. They just want to keep their head down, like stupid Ben Shapiro says, just keep your head down and get your degree and then you can change the world afterwards. Yeah, okay, cool. If you can continue to support the places that hate your very being, your mere existence, you're not going to make any difference. Just carve out your own little business and you can just make your own way in the world. That's not how any change really happens. But again, if you want to be a part of that, it's totally up to you. I'm just telling you, you're a coward and you got to reconcile that with yourself. But the people who believe in this stuff, it's just like the people that are on Twitter, okay? Because that's where all of this stuff gestates. It used to on Tumblr until that became a dead platform, and then they just all migrated over there. And whenever companies make these ludicrous statements, okay, they do their corporate redesign to appeal to a wider audience, to make their Black Lives Matter statements that are out there. They're all just appealing to the Twitterites, the Twitterati that are out there. And that is a subsection of people, because what is it? 30% of the United States is on Twitter. And even of that, an even smaller proportion of people are actually active on Twitter. And a smaller percentage of that still does most of the tweeting. So you're appealing to a fraction of a percentage of people that actually believe all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, we've seen over and over and over again. And it just proves the statement true. Take your pick. Everything woke goes to shit, or go woke, get broke. They aren't just cliches because they're repeatedly said. They're cliches because they're true. Anyways, back to this. And they do it constantly, with various rationalizations and justifications, further corrupting what is already a stunningly corrupt enterprise. Some of my colleagues even allow themselves to undergo so-called anti-bias training conducted by supremely unqualified human resources personnel, lecturing inanely and blithely, and in an accusatory manner about theoretically all-pervasive racist, sexist, heterosexist attitudes. Ugh. Such training is now often a precondition to occupy a facility position on a hiring committee. Yeah, all you need to do is just take a look at the different things that you'd have to do in order to get any sort of position. How many more leaked documents do you really need to see? Coca-Cola, Disney, Goodyear, okay? Those have just been recently, within the past year or so. All of those documents continue to come out, and what do they have in there? Try to be less white. Thanks, Coca-Cola. Okay, if you're white, just shut up and listen. Thanks, Goodyear. All the same over and over and over again. Need I point out the implicit attitudes cannot, by the definitions generated by those who have made them a central point of the culture, be transformed by short-term explicit training, assuming that those biases exist in a manner claimed, and that is a very weak claim. and I'm speaking specifically scientifically here. The implication association test, the much vaunted IAT, which purports to objectively diagnose implicit bias, that's automatic racism and the like, is by no means powerful enough, valid, and reliable enough to do what it purports to do. Two of the original designers of the test, Anthony Greenwald and Brian Nozick, have said as much publicly. The third professor, Mahzarin Banaji of Harvard, remains recalcitrant. Much of this can be attributed to her, all right, what, a woman? No. Overtly leftist political agenda, as well as to her embeddedness within the subdisciplines, of psychological, social psychology, so corrupt that it denied the existence of right-wing authoritarianism for decades after World War II. How could you do that with a straight face without being completely and utterly ideologically polluted? I answered my own question. The same social psychologists, broadly speaking, also casually regard collectivism under the guise of system justification as a form of psychopathology. What? Oof, those are Olympic-level leaps in logic. Banaji continued denunciating... there's no dis there. Countenancing, of the misuse of the research instrument combined with the status of her position at Harvard is a prime reason we still suffer under the D.I.E. yoke. It is a baleful. Words are hard sometimes. It's because he's just staring at me judgingly through the screen. Just move it off. I'm just getting nervous. There are good reasons to support that, or to suppose that D.I.E. motivated eradication of objective testing, such as the GRE for graduate student or school admission, will have a deleterious effect on the ability of students so selected to master such topics as the statistics, social sciences, and medicine for that matter, rely upon completely for their validity. Furthermore, the accrediting boards for graduate clinical psychology training programs in Canada are now planning to refuse to accredit university clinical programs unless they have a social justice orientation. That, combined with some recent legislative changes in Canada, makes me sick to my stomach, claiming to outlaw so-called conversion therapy, but really makes it exceedingly risky for clinicians to do anything ever but agree always and about everything with their clients, have likely doomed the practice of clinical psychology, which always depended entirely on trust and privacy. Yeah, that whole patient-client privilege, it's been further eroded. Not completely destroyed, just give it enough time and continue to vote liberal. Similar moves are afoot in other professional disciplines such as medicine and law. And if you don't think that psychologists, lawyers, and other professionals are anything but terrified, the same now woke governing professional colleges, much to everyone's extreme detriment, you simply don't understand how far this all has gone. Skipping ahead a little bit, if you think D.I.E. is bad, just wait until you get a load of environmental, social, and governance scores. We need to talk about that very shortly. It's been on the list of things I wanted to talk about for a while, but ESG scores, just a little bit of an overview. It's basically the Chinese social credit system imposed on different businesses. And if you ever wonder why these companies continue, mostly to their financial detriment, to put out these stupid ideological stances on everything, ESG scores tell the story behind that. Purporting to assess corporal moral responsibility, these scores, which can have dramatical effects on an enterprise's financial liability, are nothing less than the equivalent of China's damnable social credit system. There you go. Applied to the entrepreneurial and financial worlds. It's not just the universities and the professional colleges and Hollywood and the corporate world. Diversity, inclusion, and equity, the radical leftist trinity is destroying us. Wondering about the divisiveness that is currently besetting us, look no further than D.I.E. Wondering more specifically, what is the attractiveness of Trump? Didn't see this turn coming, but I'm glad we're here. Look no further than D.I.E. Oh, whenever leftists hear Trump and D.I.E. in the same sentence, they get a 3-inch protrusion in their pants. When does the left go too far? We've seen multiple instances of them going too far, but I know he's just trying to make a point here. When they worship at the altar of D.I.E. and insist that the rest of us, who mostly want to be left alone, do as well. Where have we seen just rampant diversity, inclusion, and equity trainings being forced in certain institutions, and then after all of that has been enshrined, enact other policies that just won't leave people alone and tell them that what they're doing is good for them and safe and effective? Where have we heard that all before? Anyways, enough already. Enough. Last but not least, the final paragraph. Well, I guess there's a closing statement as well, but we'll read the last little bit here. And all of you going along with the D.I.E activists, whatever your reason, this is on you. Professors cowering cravenly in the pretense and silence, teaching your students to dissimulate and lie. To get along, all the walls crumble for shame. CEOs signaling a virtue you don't possess, and you shouldn't want to please a minority who literally live their lives by displeasure. You're evil capitalists after all, and you should be proud of it. Making a statement about how these people perceive them. Oh, capitalism is evil and collectivism is the way. At the moment, if you can't tell, if you're more reprehensibly timid even than the professors, why the hell don't you banish the human resource D.I.E upstarts back to the more appropriately named personnel departments? Stop them from interfering with the psyches of you and your employees, and be done with it. Musicians, artists, writers, stop bending your sacred and meritorious art to the demands of the propagandists before you fatally betray the spirit of your own intuition. Stop censoring your thought. Stop saying you will hire for your orchestral and theatrical productions for any other reason than talent and excellence. That's all you have. That's all any of us have. He who sows the wind will reap the whirlwind, and the wind is rising. Sounds like something that should be said, behind a mask, the wind is rising. He's not wrong. He's really not wrong. So you know what this reads to me? I've read through the entire thing, and I just cut out a couple of points in order for a little bit of brevity in the video, but I've said in other videos as well, I'm very excited for 2022, okay? And this is going to be the first year that Peterson has been caught up on the going-ons in the world, okay? Because he made his return right at the end of 2020, okay? But he's really been caught up to speed now. And as heartbreaking as it was, presumably, of him leaving the University of Toronto, this just means that there's more time to focus on the culture war, whatever you want to call it, at large, okay? I have a feeling that things are going to get very, very spicy, and I'm very much looking forward to them. Enjoy your guys' weekend, okay? Like I said, take the time to read this. I think it's very well written. It's very well reasoned. Obviously, it's coming from Jordan Peterson. But if you're just going along with this type of rhetoric, with the diversity, inclusion, and equity policies that your company, that your college, that your institution, wherever you find yourself, they're just going along with it, and you're not pushing back, if you're not realizing that this stuff leads down a disastrous path, okay? If you don't do something now to stand up against it, you're just as bad as the people instituting the policies, because every organization needs useless idiots. And if you think that you can just keep your head down low enough that, it's somebody else, well, guess what? They're going to come for you if given enough time. You don't want to give them that opportunity. You want to cut this off at the knees. That's what I'm out here doing. Not many people notice, not many people listen, but that's fine. It's growing. Eventually, at some point, I hope that my voice can be heard at least some percentage of what Peterson gets. That's my hope, and I hope that it motivates you through a very productive and excellent weekend. With that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.